So let me share my screen. And as you can see, I'm dressing in the Chinese because we just had the Chinese New Year. This is called the Year of the Rabbit. Rabbit is the one that gets up early. And according to the Chinese, you can learn a lot from the rabbit, of course. One of the things for this day is rabbit never needs a doctor because he is a vegetarian. And you don't have to go to the doctors all the time as a rabbit. So that's us, some great things. Now, the title I'm going to share with you, the presentation is the Chinese culture and the gospel. As you can see, that this is a big question. That is, how is Chinese culture related to the gospel of Christ, to the gospel of the kingdom, to the everlasting gospel? How does this all related? So we're going to look at this a big topic, but I will just give you an intro so that we can have some ideas. And we had the prayer, so I will not pray at this time. The book that is mentioned is called The God and Ancient Chinese, which you can find on Amazon. I think there is a Kindle version. And if you want to have a hot copy, you can call 1-800-245-1844. So that should be easy to remember, 1-800-245-1844. This book covers most of the things, is a comprehensive comparison between the Bible and the ancient Chinese writings. Now, when you come to the Chinese, of course, you think about God's blessing, because the first blessing, you don't have to go very far to reach that, because the first blessing God gave is when Adam and Eve were created. God blessed them and asked them to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Now today, if you look across the world, I think there's one people who does this best than any other one. That's probably the Chinese population. In other words, the Chinese has been receiving the blessings as far as population is concerned, because this truly is the first blessing. And the Chinese has been everywhere to bring the businesses, products. And there is a saying that God made heaven and the earth, made a man, and Chinese made everything else. So in a way, that Chinese is blessing the world through their products. Of course, the Chinese population is ancient. We have a big population. We call ourselves Tangren, which is in the Chinese, I would say, Tangrenjie. Chinatown is called Tangrenjie because the first one, we call ourselves Tangren because we worship, we have an ancestor. We respect him as our ancestor, and he comes from the place Tang, and he is the one Confucius said, the most obedient one to heaven. So he is a worshiper of God. And that has given us a special way to address ourselves, who we are, and we are his descendant. And it seems like it goes without saying that the Bible has so wide and far-reaching influence all over the world. The gospel of the kingdom is opening doors to many countries and to the heart of many people. But it's also true today that although there are many misunderstandings, there are better appreciation of the Chinese wisdom. And I'd like to bring you back to one statement that was made in 1988, I think. The Nobel Prize winners, they had a meeting on how to face 21st century. They come up with 12 conclusions. One of them said, if mankind is to survive, it must go back 25 centuries in time to tap the wisdom of Confucius. Now, this is remarkable, indicating that people are recognizing the wisdom. However, there's always misunderstandings about when it's come to Chinese culture. From the Chinese side, most people today, they think Christianity is a foreign religion. But for the Christian side, many things, the Chinese culture is a cult, and the Chinese people are pagans. That's basically, there's not much communication in between the two groups. When people thinking about the Chinese culture, maybe Jackie Chan come up to the very high. This is a poll saying that, when people think about the Chinese culture, Jackie Chan and Great Wall, and then Chinese food and so forth. Now, where shall we begin? I think it's a good place to begin is the very beginning. That is always the good place for everything. So when we talk about the Chinese culture and the gospel, and we also come to the beginning. Today, if you come to talk about the world civilizations, we always talking about the 4 ancient civilizations, which are Egypt and Babylon and India, and also China. Now, why do you think they talk about a 4, not 5, not 7, or not 3? Why they always think about when it comes to the beginning, it somehow is associated with the number 4 civilizations. Along the 4 civilizations are the 4 big rivers. India, Ganges River, Egypt, Nile River, and Babylon and Euphrates, Chinese, the Yellow River. So it seems like the rivers are the place where the civilization will start. But why 4 rivers? Why this? It becomes an interesting question that if we look into the Bible, then we can find the answer. The Bible said God, when he created heaven and earth, he planted the Garden of Eden on earth. And then from the Garden of Eden, there was a river going out of the Eden to water the garden. And then from there, it was parted, become 4 heads. It become 4 rivers. In other words, the Garden of Eden is on a high mountain. The water coming down and fall into the 4 big rivers. Now, why 4 big rivers? It's probably intended that civilization will develop along the rivers. Now, people have a remote memory of this beginning, of this original plan that God had. Interestingly, the Chinese recorded this one. They recorded these 4 rivers together with the river coming from the Garden of Eden. Now, this is the Chinese think there are 12 channels going through 12 meridians, and one of them is in charge of the water metabolism in the human body. Is called the Sanjiao Jing, and right there you have Sidu right here, and also another one is called the Tianjin. So these are the places in charge of the rivers. Now it says there are the 4 rivers coming from the heavenly river. Wow, that we recorded these 2 names on our body as the points, important points in regulating the water metabolism in the human body. And in the Chinese places, we also have a place called Sichuan. I don't know whether you have a Sichuan restaurant in your place. It's pretty spicy. And that place is also called the Kingdom of Heaven. Now, if you think about it, the Garden of Eden is the Kingdom of Heaven on earth. And from there, you have 4 rivers. So the Chinese recorded this in their places, in the name of the places, and also it carry on your body and indicating that they were exposed to the origins of the world. If you look at the chronologies of the Bible, this is what we get. About 4004 BC, that was the time for the creation. And then 1656 years later, you have the flood. 101 years later, you have Tower of Babel. And after that, after 42 years, and then you have the first Chinese dynasty. In other words, the Chinese dynasty, it goes pretty, it started right after the Tower of Babel. It supports the biblical chronology. And today, when we say Christ ascended to heaven at 31 AD, that's indicating that actually the creation happened 4004 BC. I know there are some churches, some theologians even today, they're saying, oh, the earth may be created more than maybe 10,000 years, but they insist that Jesus died and ascended to heaven at 31. And they didn't realize, they didn't do their math well because they are theologians. They don't know math well. And if you say Jesus ascended to heaven 31, that you're assuming that the creation happened 4004 BC. And that's about 6,000 years to now. And of course, then you realize that the Chinese dynasty just happened, established 42 years after the Tower of Babel incident. So here we can see the correlation between the Chinese chronology and the biblical chronology. Well, I just want to show you just for fun, but in this circle, this is the Chinese writings for China. And hardly pretty clear, but this is the earliest writing we found. And how did Chinese get to China? According to the Chinese classics, it says, since the great heaven entrusted the subjects and the territory of the kingdom of Middle Kingdom, which is China, to the first king, therefore kings should offer sacrifices to heaven. So in other words, God brought the Chinese to China and set up the kings and the kingdoms. So therefore the kings should make sacrifice to heaven. This is the first record in any way you can find about China. This is the first appearance in history that is available today. Now, the Chinese history is divided into two parts, legendary history and also a written history. The written history shared about the same time when the Bible was written. So I'm laying down some of the foundations here. And as you can see, when it's come to the Bible, God's revelation, the first 2,500 years, there was no written Bible, only the oral revelation. And in spirit prophecy, in the book of Desire of Ages, it says, outside of the Jewish nation, there were men who foretold the appearance of a divine instructor. These men were seeking for truth, and to them the spirit of inspiration was imparted. One after another, like stars in the darkened heavens, such teachers had arisen. Their words of prophecy as kindled the hope in the hearts of thousands of Gentiles. So in other words, the first 2,500 years, there were men who received the oral revelation from God. And Chinese were exposed to this part of history. And therefore, as you can see, here is the 1500 BC is the time for Moses. But the Chinese history is about 700 years before Moses started to write the Bible. And in other words, they were exposed to the oral revelation. Now with this, we laid the foundation that how or why the Chinese, you can find so much the same from the Bible with the Chinese culture, because it does have a common ground, common origin. Both come from God. I'm going to show you some of the Chinese way of writing. Oh, here is in the morning, the sun is coming up, it's getting hot here. This is above. And this, as you can see, is a noble, great person. So if you combine these two together, and then you have heaven, Tian, which Chinese call Tian. That is the name for God. He's a man, he's a great one above. Pretty easy. I mean, you don't have to know Chinese to recognize this drawing. It's pictographic. The Chinese say heaven is the ancestor of all things. Nothing will be born without heaven. I think there was one typo there. Nothing will be born without heaven. Just like Book of John, the word of God, the word created everything. Without the word, nothing will be created. Nothing will be made. And I just want to show you how, you know, this verse, God made a man out of the dust, and then breath, gave the breath of life through his nostrils. And when this two combines, that man was formed. Now the Chinese say this is how man come to be, that heaven gives essence. The earth provides the form. When these two combined, it becomes man. Almost the same, except that this probably, to me, as a Chinese, I think the language is better, it's more beautiful. But it tells the same thing. The earth provides the form, heaven gives the essence. Today, as Christians, we may not appreciate this that much, but unless we compare with what is popular. I mean, to popular thing like evolution, which is even embraced by many scientists, they don't appreciate creation. And I found one Nobel Prize winner had a very beautiful definition of what science is. It said science is a belief in the ignorance of experts. As we see, especially after we've gone through COVID, look at all what the experts said about vaccines. Again and again, their sayings suggest bankrupt. And you can see science is always changing. And to me, they find a very nice way to cover it up. They call that a paradigm shift. And after a few more years, they covered it up. Oh, that way was not right. Now we develop a new way to look at things. A few years later, they develop another way, so we have another paradigm shift again. So here we see the difference from inspiration and human science. I'm not saying human science have made no progress at all, but I'm saying it's not perfect. It's always changing. But God's inspiration, once given, is always right. Once given, always right. Human science will never come to that position. The Indians also have creation stories. They think you come out of the tummy, so therefore Vishnu created everything from the tummy, you know, from the very imaginative. And this is African version. A God vomit the universe into being. Now you compare with these fables, and then you'll see, wow, the Chinese talk about creation like exactly like the Bible, because they do have the same origin. The Chinese theology might be one of the best theology I can find, because we say Tian, heaven, he is the creator. The space he created is called a Tian. And also the time that we have is also called a Tian. 1 day, 2 day, and in English you call it a day, but we say Wang Tian, Yi Tian, Liang Tian. It's the time that the space we live in, the time was given to us, all come from heaven. So one word for God applies to heaven, applies to space, applies to time as well. And we also know that life is from heaven, which is a very common knowledge. Obedience to heaven leads to life, disobedience to heaven, death. And if you hurt heaven, if you violate the law, you hurt heaven, you hurt his feelings. And it also says heaven always opens the way for man. Heaven never destroys anyone. So these are very common Chinese understanding about heaven. And when it's come to heaven, we have so many different words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 10 different ways of saying it, how to worship God. In English, I think is either my language is limited or English is limited. I couldn't find enough words to describe the relationship between man and heaven and God. But in the Chinese, at least 10 different ways to say that. Now, what is the first ceremony that a human being ever had? Well, of course, we have a first Sabbath day, but the first ceremony is a sacrifice. When man sinned, God gave them a sacrifice as a way for the future salvation. And the sacrifice is brought to the gate of Eden. So therefore, is on the border of the city of Eden. In other words, this should be called the border sacrifice because it's on the border, it's outside of Eden. So the Chinese recorded this in their writings. This may not make much sense to you because in this writing, this word means sacrifice. In it, you will see a lamb and a cow, a bull, a knife, a perfect. You use a knife to kill a lamb and a bull, and they got to be perfect. Only these animals can be used for sacrifice. This is the Chinese character for writing the word sacrifice. And we understand Noah also made a sacrifice after he got out of the ark, because at his time, Eden is taken back to heaven. So he couldn't go to the border of Eden to make sacrifice. So he just built an altar and then continued. And now, the Chinese inherited this system for thousands of years, and we call that border sacrifice. This is an altar. Earlier, Pastor mentioned that this year our theme is back to the altar. And the altar is actually before, right at the eastern gate of Eden. This is in Xi'an, and this is another place in China. And even now, if you go every day, every night, they have a performance to show the worship of heaven for the thousands of years. Now, people don't think about Chinese as worshipers, but if you go there, you will see how they, for 4,000 years, they had nothing except an altar to offer sacrifices. And if you go to Beijing, this is the temple of heaven. This temple has been there for 600 years. This is where all the emperors to come to worship heaven once a year to come here to offer sacrifices to heaven. Well, you say, how is that? You may not appreciate it much. Let me make a comparison. God called Israel out of Egypt. And after 3 months, they were brought to Mount Sinai. And Moses was called up onto the mountain for 40 days. After 40 days, they didn't see Moses, even though they were still having manna every day. But they started to worship idol because they couldn't see anyone. They couldn't see the leaders. But so idol worship, only 40 days, they started again. Now, in contrast with the Chinese didn't see anything. They didn't see any image for 4,000 years. When they come to worship heaven until 1911, no images whatsoever for 4,000 years. Now you tell me which is a more faithful people of God. For 4,000 years, once a year, offer sacrifice to heaven, no idols, no images. They didn't see anything. 40 days only, the chosen people, without seeing anything, they start to have idol worship again. So immediately you can see why the Chinese culture survived. All the other ancient culture discontinued. Why the Jewish was thrown out in this country and that country all the time? Because they follow into idol worship too easily. Now, I want to just show some of the preservation of the oral revelation from the Chinese. Now, this is the Chinese writing we call Han. Han is named after a heavenly river. It's called a starring Han. As you can see, this is the Chinese way to write water. So Han means the words inspired from heaven. This one here is called the original oracle bone, is the first way of writing the Chinese. In the 1st century, we had the first Chinese dictionary to help us to see how to read classics. Just to put you in a perspective, the first English dictionary came out in 1755, which is 1600 years later. So when you want to compare culture, that's something for keep in mind for reference. Now, I want to show you that in the Garden of Eden, you look at this is, of course, is a tree. In the Garden of Eden, there's one special tree, and God tells them, don't eat from that tree, and this is a mouse. So if you put the mouse and the tree together, it becomes this word, restrain. Restrain your mouse from touching that tree, and that is the Chinese writing for restraint, indicating there's only one restriction. Don't eat from that particular tree. So this is recorded in this writing. So because the Chinese were exposed to the oral revelation, so they preserved these things. Now, if you eat from that tree, what will happen? Well, the Bible said if you eat from that tree, then you would die. So this is the Chinese word for to die. Now, in this word, you can see a tree there. You can see 2 hands, 2 mouths. There's 2 hands, 2 mouths, eat from this tree. This is the Chinese character, meaning to die, perish. And that one is for the restriction. You have a tree, restrain your mouth. If you don't, you have to die. This is 丧命 in the Chinese. So God gave them a forbidden instruction. However, we all know what happened. The woman came to the trees and she ate from the tree of life. Pretty interesting. Her back is against the tree of life. She was facing the tree of knowledge of good and evil in this Chinese writing. And this is the first word for greed, because it starts from woman. So, well, of course, today man is also very greedy. However, it doesn't start from man, it starts from women. So the Chinese recorded that way and bear witness to the recording of the Bible. Now, you may have heard this word, the Chinese word for boat. 8 people in a boat. When Noah was asked to make the ark, the first boat in the world, there are 8 people in it. So the Chinese writing recorded this process, this incident. 8 people in a boat. That's the Chinese word for boat. Now, how would we get helped? How can we have blessings from heaven? Well, the Bible said it is the seed of the woman that will bring blessings to us. And this is a word, it's called hao, ni hao, as we say greetings, ni hao. Hao means good. It says it's a seed of the woman, it is the only good. He will bring good to us. So this is the Chinese writing for the seed of the woman, hao, good. And we have another word, talk about the incarnation of the Son of God. It says, born of a woman, a seed, as you can see, if you can see my point here, here is a man coming from heaven down to this earth. It's going this way. This is a man coming from heaven, coming to this earth. And this is a woman. So he was born from a woman. The 1st century dictionary said, an ancient mother, a holy mother in the antiquity, was conceived by heaven and give birth to the Son of Heaven. Incarnation of the Son of Heaven. Because Bible, the first proclamation of the gospel God made in the Garden of Eden. It is the seed of the woman that will come to save us. But how would he save us? What is his methodology? What is his plan? So let's take another word, take a look. And here you can see this is a fallen man. He's falling, and everyone can see it's a man falling upside down. This is called, the meaning is disobedient. Disobedient man is falling upside down. But there is a great man, a great standing man. He come to the rescue of this fallen, disobedient man. So if you put these two words together, there comes the grace, the Chinese word for grace, for unexpected blessing, 幸. And you can see right here, the fallen man is there, and then this uplifting great man coming to this world to help him, to bring him out of death. This word means to be saved from death. Now, Paul have to use a lot of words to describe it. For by one man's disobedience, man were made sinners. So also by one man's obedience, many will be made righteous. If Paul was born in China, we have a much thin Bible than what we have today. It would be so much easier. And we wouldn't have the need of so many theologians because it's unnecessary. Everyone will understand. One word, one picture, already show very clearly. Fallen man saved by a great man, finished. The whole plan of salvation in one word, saving you from death. This brings you unexpected grace. One word. We not only have this isolated, words, but we also have, like Ellen White was mentioning, there are men who foretold the coming of the Messiah, the divine instructor. So I'm going to give you a couple of them. From the classics, the prophecies about the coming holy man coming to save us. This is made by Confucius, this statement. About 500 years before Jesus, Confucius said, the master said, if truly a king were to arise, it would still require 30 years for his love to be manifested. Hey, if truly a king were to arise, he would still wait for 30 years before his love to be made manifested to the public. Now we all know Jesus was born as a king, and he was baptized at a 30 years age, and then started his public ministry, made his love to be known after waiting for 30 years. Lao Tzu, another man, he said, now he recorded what the holy man said about his own mission. This is not the Chinese talking about the holy man. It is the holy man talking about himself. He says, he who is disgraced for the kingdom is the Lord of the kingdom. He who suffers for the kingdom is the king of the universe. Jesus come to die for our disgrace, to die for our sin, to suffer for the kingdom. So he's qualified to be called the Lord of the Lord, the King of the Kings. Now, this was written about 600 years before Jesus was born. Who commit? Only Jesus commit with this. Now you say, wait a minute, and Jesus also was dead, and after 3 days he was resurrected. Did you have anything in the Chinese talking about waiting for 3 days for the resurrection? I don't know in your culture, but in the Chinese culture, when someone died, you need to put the corpus there, dead body, for 3 days. before bury the person. Why 3 days? Well, Confucius wrote it. He said, to wait for 3 days is to see whether he will be resurrected, whether he will come back. If after 3 days he still does not come back to life, then we'll bury the person. And therefore, the holy man made this rule, and that is still practiced today. We know that Jesus came to make his love to the people at 30 years old, and 3 years later he was crucified. But after 3 days, he rose from the dead and he went to heaven. Now the Chinese are also saying that if you receive truth, you go to heaven. They know the destination. So all of this, you can find that all in the Chinese writings. Now these are just some of the samples I can show you. We can show you much more. And so you can see, wow, actually there is another God before the Bible was given. Now we always say Bible and the Bible only. Now that applies after the Bible was written. But before the Bible was written, the first 2,500 years, like Noah, like Enoch, like Adam, they wouldn't have a Bible. All they had is the oral revelation of God. Now, folks, the oral revelation as recorded and preserved today by the Chinese was not corrupted by the Greek philosophy. And it's still pretty pure. Now, I want to show you the last one, and then I think we'll come to a close. The last one is about the Chinese medicine. And you know that Chinese have a long history of using natural remedies, using herbs, and using different ways to heal people. These are well, I'm just showing this. If you are healthy, this is the word for healthy. It means that you can run, and also you can open the bow, arrow, and you can pull it open, and then you can shoot an arrow. That means you have force. And then another way is a brush pen, like very soft. If your body is soft, then you are okay. If your body is stiff, then you got some problem. It's just pictographic images. And of course, this is another one is you are also means healthy. That is, if you can do this, get rid of the shell of the rice. You can still process rice. That means you're okay. You're health-wise, you're doing okay. If you can do that, you're doing okay. And one of them, the way to measure our body, even the physiology today, they say the body is trying to keep homeostasis. If we lost this balance, we're going to have a problem. So we need to keep this balance in the human body so that we are very healthy that way. The Chinese talking about the yin and the yang as a balance. And you wonder, well, where did they get this idea, yin and the yang? The Chinese say the creation of heaven is yin and the yang. If you look at it, and also they say this redemption is also yin and yang. Yang means divine and yin means human. And as you can see, human and divine working together for our redemption. Now, if you read your Bible again from Genesis, reading it from a different perspective, and you will see very interesting. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Heaven is yang, the earth is yin. And then God said, let there be light. The light is yang, darkness is yin. And then he separated the morning and evening. Morning is yang and the evening is yin. And then he separates the water and a firmament and so forth. The up is yang and the down is above the firmament is yang, under the firmament is yin. So if you continue, and in all the God's creation, he basically goes with two categories. When it comes to, he creates all the plants. All the plants are divided into two groups, masculine plants and feminine plants. And when it comes to create animals, the animals are these two categories, male and a female. When it comes to create a man, two categories, man, women. Now, how are you going to put all this into big categories? You can say this is A plus, fine. If this is B, this is B plus, fine. But the Chinese say this is yang, this is yin. This is just the way they categorize things. Now, I know that some people, when they heard about the yin and the yang, immediately they think that's a cult. But, well, because they think this might be the same with Greek, but no, yin and yang are together. Just like heaven and earth is just one, but yet separate. Man and woman are one body, but then there are two. And same thing with animal, with everything. They also look about 5 movements, but I will just mention it, that God spent 5 days to make all the preparations. And in physics, even today, we describe time as movements. So one movement is 1 day. So 5 movements, 5 days. For 5 days, God created all this, make all these preparations. So whatever we need is corresponding to what was already made in the first 5 days. So when we got sick, there's something corresponding to the something in the first made in the first 5 days that's going to help us. So the Chinese, all the philosophy, all the understanding built upon yin and yang and the 5 days, because the 5 days is for your health. This is the Chinese way of writing food. This may not make much sense to you, but at least you can see this one. This is a cow. It looks like a cow. This means not. Don't eat a cow. In other words, don't eat animals. This word said you only eat the fruit that grow out of ground. So when we say food, we have 2 words. One, eat from the things grow out of the ground. Second, don't eat animals. These 2 together are the Chinese words for food. So it tells you what you should eat, what you shouldn't, just in the word food. Not like in English, food is food, food is everything. No, the Chinese food, very specific. Only the things grow out of the ground are considered to be food. Animals don't touch it. That is the Chinese understanding. Now they got this from the oral revelation before Leviticus was given. Leviticus 11. Leviticus 11 allows you to eat clean meat, but no, the Chinese say, no, that was not for food. So we still have the Eden plan. So this is a Chinese writing for vegetarian, 素食, vegetarian. If you want to looking for a Chinese restaurant and look at this icon, you will see, okay, that's a Chinese restaurant. And these 2 words, 素养, means character. Character is built, is fed upon vegetarian diet. Oh, they make a close connection between good character, good virtue, and a good diet. I don't think you can find anywhere else that put such a high importance to your diet. You got to be a vegetarian to really have good character. That's the Chinese way of saying things. And it says vegetarian will last long. In other words, this is even in the future, in eternity, we'll continue to be vegetarian. Vegetarian lasts forever. This phrase means that. But flesh does not. And this is saying all your disease, all your problem come from the mouth because you eat of it. All the disasters coming out of the mouth because you say it in the wrong way are causing problems. So how to control our mouth is important. You have to have temperance, and if not, like this word, you have a mouse here, 1, 2, 3. You have 3 mouths eating things like a mountain. This word is cancer. If you just eating, drink, smoke, and everything like a mountain, you bring cancer on yourself. This is so. It's tell us that you know, you need to keep, with the Chinese say, 30%. You only eat up to the 70% satisfaction. Don't go over it. If you go over it, you're bringing disease to yourself. You just need to like eating like half full or a little bit over 60% or 70%. 80% is a little bit more than necessary. You should keep yourself, always have the feeling of hunger. Then you will be healthy. If you always feel very full, then you are going to see doctors. So Ellen White's talking about, you know, disease. The restorative power is not in drugs, but in nature. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. Sometimes I ask people, what does this nature mean? Many people, without even thinking, that, oh, this is nature outside. No. Nature means human body. The restorative power is not in drugs, but in the human body itself. Because disease is the effort of the human body to free itself from the conditions that result from the violation of the laws of health. So God already put the medicine, put the healing power in the human body, but this was not always recognized. You know, in the Chinese, we have different ways of healing people. One of the way you have heard about acupuncture, maybe. Acupuncture is one way to let the body, if some place is blocked, so using the acupuncture as it stimulates, so the body can function for itself. This lady, she was deaf for 20 years. And she has tinnitus for 20 years. And her right ear was deaf for the last 2 years. For somehow we got to know each other, and her husband brought her to me. So I put some acupuncture on her. And now even the first time, her ringing, the loud ringing in her ear is almost gone, even the first day. And now I have given her some, a few times, because I travel all the time, only when I was at home, and then she come over, we can help her a little bit. Now I have give her 7 times treatment. She said she can almost hear her own speaking right now. Deaf for 20 years, using this natural remedies to let the human nature, to let the power, the restorative power that God put within us to do its work. And there's no side effect. And well, I have also helped. I will not say too much. Maybe I play this one.
So that we can
This person, while I was having the meeting, he came over to sit beside me. His arm couldn't lift up. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, well, if you can help me. I reach out and I found I still got the needles within my bag. So I put some needles on him. I said, you know, I got to go. And after 20 minutes, you just pull it out and throw it away. That's all. We prayed. But after 5 minutes, I asked him, I said, can you tell me where the pain is? It was trying to feel the pain. It was gone. I couldn't feel the pain anymore. And
Yeah. Okay. Now, because of that, I can play badminton. Okay.
so he's saying
Thank you.
after this 20 minutes treatment, he was able to play badminton right away. Couldn't even lift up his arm. So these are some of the natural remedies, as you can see. Not only this, the Chinese also use herbs. We know that a New Start program, we use herbs, we use fruits, plants, maybe up to 100 kinds or 200 at the most. The Chinese use 2,500 different types of herbs that God put in his pharmacy. For the Chinese medicine, you don't need the pharmaceutical companies to making profit out of you, because God is the producer. He produces plants for our healing. And this is well preserved and learned in the Chinese medicine. But because today is time is not enough, but I will just mention that according to the Chinese system, it says this is given by God directly. This healing system, this understanding about the human body. So I'm going to show you the last about how does the Chinese preserve the Sabbath. There is a science that's called the chronobiology. Chronobiology was developed, recognized in the 1980s. And like the Bible said, there is a time for everything. To everything, there is a season, a time to every purpose under heaven. So for this human body, it is also a time for everything. And we Chinese have a saying for breakfast is for your nourishment. Lunch is for enjoyment. The supper is for doctors. If you want to see doctors, go ahead and have more supper. So in another way, we should try to escape supper, because that is a good time for the system to rest. And in the modern technology terminology, we say that is a time for the system to do detox in the evening. So the more time you give, the better. This is the Franz Halbert. He was a professor at the University of Minnesota. He was the one who discovered this chronobiology. And as you can see, the secret of our body clock review, there is a weekly rhythms, 7 days cycle in the human body. He also discovered that there is a 24 hours rhythm in the human body. He said, chronology is the science of biological rhythms, more specifically the impact of 24-hour light and dark cycle on our biochemistry and therefore behaviors. That's the chronobiology. So in the 1980s, he came to China and to share about his discovery and what he discovered. But after he finished his talk in Beijing College of Traditional Chinese Medicine, this professor stood up. He said, "We appreciate your coming to share with us. However, we know these two reasons in the human body for more than 4,000 years. In the Chinese medicine, there is a 24-hour cycle here that is preserved to show us, to teach us what we should do. Now, for instance, if you look at this one, the liver is morning 1 to 3 a.m. in the morning. This is the time for the liver to work. 3 to 5 is the time for the lung to work. And 5 to 7, it is the time for your large intestine to work. This is the natural time to answer the nature's call. And this normally is a good time to get up. And after that, it is a time for your stomach to work. 7 to 9 is the time for the stomach to work. After 7 to 9 and 9 to 11, it's for your spleen system to help your digestion, to transform what you digested, to transform that to other parts. So it's better not to have between meals. Otherwise, you're, not at the right timing. So you can see when it's come to the evening, this is your kidney, your gallbladder, your liver. These are all the detox organs, systems that they need a rest. They will do the job in the evening. But in the morning, during the day, all this time for the body to take energies, to take food, to process it. So this was discovered, was given to the Chinese 4,000 years ago. Nobody discovered this. It was just given to us. So we just using this, continue to use it. And it was also today, we need to follow this way to keep fit. This is just some of the Chinese. And the Chinese, we have another medicine book. It's written by this one. And in this book, he wrote about Sabbath. He said there is a 7-day cycle in the human body. How you will get healed. It always follow that cycle. After COVID, China used his formula to deal with COVID. This man lived 1,800 years ago. Here is just the contrast. In China, they did a study. Use the Western medicine, you treat 320 people, 113 died. Death rate, mortality rate 35.3%. And they used about 3 weeks to heal. Chinese medicine, no one died. Same sample. Only 7 days they got healed. For Western medicine, you use 400,000 yuan, Chinese yuan, 400,000 in Wuhan to treat people. But the Chinese medicine is about 400 yuan, 10,000 times cheaper. And you say, why not use Chinese medicine? Because no profit. There's no profit out there. Those companies, those people, those greedy people need profit. And there's so many people out there today, so many religions out there today that they want to do themselves. The religion from Jesus is free. Why not take this free one? Well, this is something that we cannot figure it out about the deceitfulness of human heart. The human heart is extremely deceitfulness, and we just deceive ourselves. So the 7-day cycle is also in the Chinese. So I'm just showing you this. And the Chinese say the 7-day cycle is in all animals, in everything. This was written 600 years before Jesus. He said, if you want to observe the 7-day cycle, you need to observe it from all animals, from everything. Do you think Adventists have this understanding about 7-day cycle in everything? I don't think so. At least not that clearly written. Now, I did some study about the zoology, animals, about their pregnancy. How does that work? Well, here is the chart. It says from the eggs to chicken, 3 weeks. From the eggs to dog, 4 weeks. And for dog, 9 weeks. For chimpanzee, 33 weeks. For human and a cow, 14 weeks. For horses, 47 weeks. Everything is by 7. The cycle of 7 is in all God's creation. So the Chinese say, to observe the 7, you need to observe everything God created. It's right there. So the Sabbath is not only in the human body, in all this pregnancy of all the animals, you find this data there. So the Chinese probably, I would conclude by saying that probably was the first one who recorded the seventh-day Sabbath in the whole world prior to Moses wrote Genesis. So I hope this will give us some idea about the Chinese culture and the gospel. Unfortunately, much of that is unknown, needs to be rediscovered. But the good thing is the writing still there the same, classes are still there the same, and we have access to it. We can prove, we can point to this road, to those resources, and to say, look, Christianity is not a foreign religion. Christianity is a religion for the entire humanity. The Chinese were exposed to the plan of salvation from the very beginning. And now it is a time for us not only provide evidences to support the Bible, but also provide more evidences, more witnesses to call us back to our Creator God.